2, 4. Good evening. The time is now 5 p.m. I call this meeting of the Granbury Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections: 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076. The time is now 5:01. Well, good evening, everyone. It is now 6 o'clock, and we are reconvening into open session, and we will begin with invocation by Courtney Gore.
If you'll bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, as we begin a new school year, we come before you with grateful hearts. We thank you for the gift of education, the opportunities it brings, and the potential that lies within each student and educator. We ask for your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions that will shape the future of our schools and the lives of our children. Help us to work together in unity and purpose, fostering an environment of respect, compassion, and support. May our actions reflect your love and inspire our students to reach their fullest potential. Grant us the strength to face the challenges ahead and the courage to embrace the change for betterment of our community. Let us be mindful of the needs of every student and family we serve, ensuring that all feel valued and included. As we embark on this new year, may we cultivate a spirit of collaboration and innovation, always striving for excellence in education. We also humbly ask that you bless our superintendent and his family as they begin a new chapter of their lives. May you bless him on this new journey, guide his path, and cover him with your grace. Father, we also ask that you be with the families in our community that have recently lost loved ones. May they find comfort and peace from friends and family during this time. It is in your holy name that we pray. Amen.
We are having our colors presented today by our MCJROTC. Please stand.
Forward, march, left, right, left, 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 right. Color guard, halt, left, face, cover, present, colors. Gary, colors. Ready, cut, post. Post. Cover. Right face. Forward, march, left, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right.
Thank you so much. That really is a great way to start the evening. All right, and from now we will go on to the public hearing on budget and tax rate. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, the purpose of this public hearing is to share the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate for the upcoming year. You have packets in front of you that will have charts in them that'll be a little bit easier to read once we get into those. Get this turned on. There you go. The first budget we will talk about will be the general operating budget. We will speak to the revenues. These revenues did not change a great deal. They changed a little bit from the July budget workshop due to certified values coming in on July 25th. You can see that it is an increase of $792,000, which is a 0.85%, less than 1% increase in revenues. The majority of that is in the current tax year collections. It is a little bit less than we did in July, but that's going to be offset against on your foundation revenue down there in 5812, because there's a hold harmless section whenever local revenues don't come in high enough to supplement the basic allotment, then it is supplemented on the state level, and that's what the 5812 is. So you can see it is a $93,901,941 budget in revenues. And the next slide will be your expenditures, which is a balanced budget at $93,901,941. You can see the bulk or the majority of your general operating is under function 11, which is direct instruction. That is 62% of the budget net of recapture, and that's where the majority of that is. Plant maintenance is the next highest. That's going to be your utilities, your liability insurances, and your property and casualty insurances and those things.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
When you say direct instruction, can you expand on what that means a little bit?
Direct instruction will be in the classroom. That has to do with the teacher delivering instruction. It could be technology delivering instruction. It can be textbooks. It can be supplies. Anything that's in that classroom that is direct instruction to that student, from that teacher to that student. It's salaries, yes. The third highest one in there is going to be your transportation. You can see transportation budget went from 3.7 adopted budget last year to a $4.1 million budget this year. Again, it is a balanced budget at $93,901,941. The next slide, it just went off. Got it? Right there. Okay, is the object codes. You can tell in this, the 6100s at the top of that are salaries, and of that budget, the $93 million budget, 85.6% of that is salaries net of recapture. That is the bulk of our budget. So when you talk about budget cuts, there's not much leeway in that other 15% to move any one direction. So that's where your utilities, your fuel costs, and any other incidentals that we might have. But the main part of that budget is 85.6%, and that's your salaries.
And so as far as like transportation goes and inflation, can you expand a little bit more on what kind of inflation rates we've been
Absolutely,
seeing?
I can. The basic allotment was changed to 6160, and that was in 2019 with House Bill 3. Since that time, we've had about 14% inflation. I can tell you that fuel costs in 20 and 21 were $310,000 for the district. In 21 and 22, $570,000. 22 and 23, $644,000, and we expect to top that this year. And in 3 years, that's a 109% increase in fuel costs.
So our budget has gone up approximately $800,000, or what percentage was it?
It is 0.85%.
0.85%. And how many more students do we have this year?
This year, our enrollment, we're right at 7913, but we have, I believe, they told me 90 in the queue to work today.
We're still enrolling kids. We
still enrolling
typically
kids.
enroll kids till September 1.
And likely after that, after Labor Day is when we'll have an influx.
Right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But we're going to end up with more kids percentage-wise
We're projecting-
than we are
we're-
going up.
The projection is 8,200 kids.
Yeah, 82.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Some highlights of that budget. The revenue is projected at $93 million, $93,901,941. The expenditures are a balanced budget at that same amount. It is an increase of $792,479, and there are no salary increases except for teacher steps in this budget. And at the end of the year, the projected fund balance at 8/31/25 will be $24,851,926, which is well within board policy. Historically, you can see where we are, and if we have and the projection for the 23-24 is that $24 million for fund balance, and if we have a balanced budget, we expect it to stay the same. We do know with conservative spending that we will likely not realize any deficit, and we may add more money at that time to that fund balance.
As far as a balanced budget goes, a lot of districts across Texas are adopting deficit budgets. you know what that percentage is as far as how many districts are adopting deficit
I
budgets?
do not know the percentage of, but I know that the surrounding districts are all adopting deficit budgets. We've been lucky that we haven't increased our allotments for our departments, and you can ask any department in here, they haven't gotten any more money in the last few years. So we're expecting them to work within those guidelines and within those amounts to keep us at a balanced budget.
I can tell you that 80% of all districts in the state of Texas are having a deficit budget this year.
Yes, ma'am.
And do we want to talk about why that is?
Because the state isn't funding the school districts.
That's right.
Well, they haven't
They
changed
haven't
the
changed,
allotment.
yeah, they haven't
per
changed the basic
student.
allotment.
The basic
since
allotment is the same as it
2019.
was in 2019
Yeah.
with House Bill 3.
And
But-
then they have funding set aside from last session, but they haven't used it because.
It was not distributed. No, ma'am.
Correct.
There's a misunderstanding that people think that the money that they send to us from taxes, from their property tax, is what we get to use to fund the school, and that is not the case because of recapture. The state comes in and it tells us how much we can have M&O-wise per child.
That is
And
correct.
that's what we have.
That's what the basic allotment is. The basic allotment is 6160. That is based on the average daily attendance. 6160 is going to be your basic education student, somebody that doesn't require a CTE multiplier, a special ed multiplier, at-risk multiplier. That's just going to be the basic allotment for a student that you get. Now, those other demographics or populations that we're talking about do have multipliers on them. CTE has 0.21, 0.47. Special ed has their multipliers, and you do get a little bit more funding for that. But they also have higher needs, and you have to provide those needs in the classroom. So that's kind of what helps fund it. Basic allotment has not increased. Your fuel bill has increased. Your utility bill has increased. Your grocery bill has increased. All of those things have increased at least 14% since 2019. But the basic allotment or the multipliers have not.
So basically, the cost of education is gone up, but the amount of money that we receive from the state is not changing.
That is correct. The next budget that we will talk about will be our debt service budget. This is the budget that we pay our bonds out of for buildings and materials, or our vehicles and those things in the past. The budget is set up to bring in $13,911,918. This expenditures under here, under bond principal, includes an $8,880,000 prepayment or defeasance, bringing the expenditures to $12,904,748, which leaves us a net profit of $1,007,170, which is within 28% of operating, which is pretty close to board policy at 20% on general operating, so it's kind of the same parameters we use for that budget as well. This proposed budget is set up on a 14.5-cent tax rate. The debt service budget will produce approximately $9,887,170 on that proposed 14.5 cents, making projected fund balance would have been at 12.4. However, later on in the meeting, you will be presented with a bond defeasance of that $8,880,000, and that will save taxpayers on that particular payment of $1,983,081 in interest payments. This next slide is real small, but you can tell this is from our BOK, our financial advisors. It is on our Series 2020A. This is the prepayment of the $8,880,000. And then the next slide will show you that it saves taxpayers $1,983,081 in interest payments throughout the life of that bond. And this slide right here is small, but you should be able to see it in your book. This is a slide that we like to show as savings from district's debt management practices. Since 2005, the district has refinanced or paid off early $168,259,000 in bonds, saving taxpayers in that time period $29,502,139. And that is your debt service portion of the budget.
I think that's worth noting, and I think it's actually worth repeating, that our taxpayers need to know that these debts that we have are being paid off early.
Yes, ma'am.
And good job. I think it's a great job of management from our superintendent and our CFO. Good job.
Thank you. The next budget that the board is responsible for adopting at the function level will be our child nutrition budget. This budget is set up to bring in $4,666,268 with expenditures of $4,768,218. That will leave our fund balance at 2025 at $1,051,130, which is 22.4% of her operating, which is well within board policy. And she needs to bring that down as well because she has been higher in the past, and we're trying to get her back within range that Texas Department of Agriculture approves. It's not a balanced budget, it's a deficit budget, but it's going to be where she needs to be. And you can see that on your spreadsheet right there. And the last portion of this is your tax rates. This is a historical chart. I'm going to get through all these. Of the past few years, you can see that this year's proposed tax rate is 93.19 cents, which is actually a 0.0023, almost a quarter of a cent reduction in the tax rate. But it has gone down every year. You can see last year's M&O rate was 0.7892, and the debt service was 14.5. This year's proposed is 78.69 cents, and the 14.5 cents that we've talked about already. But again, a quarter of a cent reduction from last year's tax rate. That is a brief overview and the proposed budget that you're being presented with tonight, and I will answer any questions that I can at this point.
And why is the M&O set at 7869?
So we are considered a Chapter 49 or a recaptured district, and so our tax revenues are higher than, say, a West Texas school district. However, no school district in the state of Texas can be less than 90% of any other district on their tax rate, so we are at the floor on our maximum compressed tax rate, which is 61.69. And then we have 17 cents, which are 8 golden pennies, 9 copper pennies that the taxpayers of this district approved last November for us. So that brings us to 78.69.
This is the lowest we can go. Like, we can't.
That's our maximum compressed tax rate
Yeah.
plus the approved 17 cents
Later,
that the voters gave us in November.
So if we're looking to make cuts in this budget anywhere, the only place to really do that is either get rid of positions for teachers or pay teachers less. Is that correct?
That's correct. 85%,
85.6% of the budget goes to payroll. And so you're talking about, if you're looking at major substantial cuts, you're looking at staff cuts. Certainly you could trim 10% off of campus budgets, off of extracurriculars, probably without doing much harm, but you start going deeper to 20-25%. It's going to do substantial harm to programs like band, like athletics, like any of our UIL academic programs. However, if you're looking to make significant cuts, obviously it has to be in payroll when 85% of the budget is staff.
The utilities aren't going to change. Fuel's not going to change.
Those are fixed costs. So, and those are rising costs. Utilities continue to go up for us. Fuel continues to go up for us.
Property insurance.
Insurance, property, casualty, liability, we'll approve that tonight. All of those things continue to go up. Those are fixed costs. We've got to keep the lights on.
And those are going up for everybody, not
Across the board.
Yeah, it's for. I mean, I know at my electric bill, my food bill, my insurance, everything for me is going up. So it's not just the school district; it's across the board.
And yeah, and so truly it's a credit to not only our business office and Mr. Whitefield, but all of our campuses. They have all felt the squeeze. They felt it since 2019. Everybody's trying to do more with less. We've asked them to do more with less. And so the fact that by every measurable indicator, whether we're talking about the STAR test or the first report, the district continues to perform at a high level, even though we're squeezing everybody's budget so that we can bring to you a balanced budget year after year, so that we can come year after year with a lower tax rate. It's something that we're proud of, but it does speak volumes, not only to the leadership of our Board of Trustees, but also to what we do in the business office, what our HR department is doing, what Stacy Brown is doing in our curriculum department, and it trickles down to all of our campuses as well.
And as far as the part that's teachers and the part that's administration, from what I understand, across the state, the typical average percent that is administration is 12%. What percent are we of our people?
The ratio in our PEMS report shows that a district that's 5,000 to 9,999 students should be a 0.125 ratio. Our ratio is 0.0777, so we're at about half.
Half.
Close. A little over half.
A little over half, but substantially less.
Absolutely, and that's verifiable through PEMS.
So in other words, what you're just saying, as far as our administration staff is concerned, it's half the size that the average
The standard.
district.
The standard, yes, ma'am.
Okay, the standard is in the state of Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Whitefield. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move on. That's closing of the public hearing, and we now move on to superintendent report.
All right, well, welcome back. First board meeting of the new school year. I will brag a little bit on Mr. Whitefield because he didn't take the opportunity to brag on himself. We did receive our first rating, our Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas report today. For the 9th consecutive year, Granbury ISD will receive a superior rating, but for the 2nd consecutive year, GISD will receive a perfect financial score from the state of Texas. So great job, Mr. Whitefield. Thank you for what you and your team did. Also, later on tonight, we'll approve our technology budget. I do want to brag on Mr. Wilson. This summer, he and his team deployed 2,200 new devices to our campuses. I know that they were working hard to make sure that we were up and ready for the school year. As we get going on the start of the school year, I think anytime you're talking about an increase in student enrollment, you're talking about back to school, and you're talking about 105-degree heat, buses are always an issue. I always like to take this time to share a few facts from our transportation department. Our district covers 225 square miles, and each day, if you were to line up our buses end to end on how much they drive, it's the equivalent of driving from San Diego to Charleston, South Carolina, and back. We go through 1,000 gallons of fuel per day. We run 54 bus routes in the morning to go pick up elementary students. Then they come back, drop off the elementary students, and then those 54 buses go out again and pick up secondary students and then bring them to school, and then we repeat in the afternoon. So our buses are rolling a lot, and you're talking about a bus that is stopping frequently, open the doors. I'm proud of not only our transportation department, but really our mechanics in the transportation department. They've been able to keep our buses up and running this year, even though it's an older fleet, and they've been able to keep the air conditioners on and working, although it still gets hot because, again, when you're stopping and you're opening the door so frequently and you have 60 kids on a bus, it's going to get a little warm. But I know they're working hard to make it more comfortable, and certainly that'll come as the weather cools off. But the numbers I have today, over 3,300 kids riding our school buses, and just for a little a little glimpse into what Mr. Carruthers and his team deals with. The state allotment that we receive for transportation is $964,000 a year. We spend $4.1 million a year as a district. So that's about 25% that is funded by the state. The rest of it is picked up by our local M&O budget. So, Brian, I know you're doing the best with what you have. Your drivers are doing a great job, and we appreciate how hard you're working. To our marshals, I can tell you that we do have silent alarms now installed throughout the district in every campus in most of our common areas. I know they're still working on a punch list, especially as it relates to connectivity, to make sure all of those are operational, but we are in compliance with TEA guidelines as it relates to the silent panic alarms. Also, want to congratulate Wes Jones, our HR department, and our principals. GISD is fully staffed at this time, which is amazing, especially as we face enrollment growth in the district, with the exception, I think, of one Marshall, which Chief Clark assures me that we'll have probably by the end of the week. So great job from our HR department. And then again, just on behalf of our Board of Trustees and our administrative staff, thank you to all of our campus principals, all of our teachers. We had a great first week of school. It is exciting to see the kids back in the classrooms learning. And so thank you guys. The year 2024-2025 is off to a great start. Madam President, that is your report for August.
Thank you very much, Dr. Glenn. From there, we're going to move on to public comments. I'm going to read the same statement I do every month. To better serve the students and staff and communities throughout GISD, individuals who wish to address the board during the public comments portion of the board meeting are required to register online. The form can be found at the GISD website under School Board Board Meetings tab. If someone lacks the technology necessary to complete the online submission form, they can call the GISD Administration Building or complete the form in person at the Granbury ISD Administration Building. Registration will open at the time the meeting agenda is posted, typically 5 p.m. on Friday before the meeting, or 72 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Registration will close at noon the day of the meeting. Please understand that in accordance with Texas law, the board is not able to respond directly to comments or questions posed by the speakers during public comments. Therefore, GISD staff members will review submissions and, if necessary, reach out to seek resolution or additional information prior to the meeting. Please stick to the agenda item you refer to in your registration. We will be giving 3 minutes to each person, and the first one up is Mr. Jim Jarrett. Mr. Jarrett is speaking on the budget.
Thank you, Madam President, Board, Dr. Glenn. Thank you for all that you do, and I know this week has to have been hectic. I have a couple of suggestions at how GISD can positively affect the 2025 budget. $250,000 to $500,000 is not like the dollars that Mr. Whitfield or Whitefield has been talking about. But one, if you request that the appraisal district, this is our HCAD, request the appraisal district refund the GISD portion of $294,000 in excess funds that were identified in the 2023 annual audit of the appraisal district, and this should be about 180, perhaps 200,000. Two, do not approve the 2025 appraisal district of $3,075,000. This is about an 8.5%, 9% increase. Instead, insist that the appraisal district revise the budget to no more than $2.5 million, which is the average that they have actually spent over the last 5 years. I'd like to point out that during the last 5 years, the appraisal district annual audits show that the excess funds for these years total $2.8 million. By tax code statute, these dollars are to be returned or credited to the taxing entities each year. I've been with the chief appraiser a couple of hours today even. He has a different belief that allows the board, the appraisal board, to commit these funds to unbudgeted initiatives with no entity approval. And we're having a discussion on that. There'll be more coming, I'm sure. With the new auditors on board for the appraisal district, the 2023 annual audit included a restatement of the 2022 annual audit to properly account for the $2.8 million in excess funds. $1.9 million was returned to the entities, and I think you remember that from last year. With the new auditor's restatement, we now know that $700,000 over and above budgeted and entity-approved expenditures has been paid into the appraisal district retirement fund. Now we also know that almost $400,000 has been paid out for architectural fees, surveys, and other expenses directly related to the appraisal district's attempt to build a new appraisal office building, another effort that was not approved by the taxing entities. This $1 million, the 700 and the 400 is probably gone, so there's probably no money coming back there, but we will be covering this in greater detail at City Council tomorrow, 6 o'clock at City Hall, and all of you are invited if you'd like to have some, this is just summary information. We're going to dive deep into it tomorrow. Thank you, and we do appreciate all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Next up is Tim Bolton, also speaking on the budget.
Thank you, Madam President and the board, and Dr. Glenn. Dr. Glenn, congratulations. All right, so on the agenda, item 12B, I wanted to talk about the, the proposal to pay those bonds down in advance. So I want to know, is it fair to assume that the administration has administered or affected the following remedies for bus purchases and maintenance and repairs, for plumbing and toilet repairs, AC repairs and replacements, leaky roof repairs, the security concerns at the various campuses, because I know that was all part of the May bond. And I applaud, by the way, I'm a tax hound, and I applaud the effort to save taxpayers. I've got the number for you, that $1.983 million. I love that, of course, to pay those bonds down. But I wonder if that accounts for the time value of money, that we have them at a favorable interest rate compared to the interest rates that we might be able to get today. I certainly wouldn't refinance my own home mortgage today. I have a much better rate than I could find. And the rates that we have on the bonds that we hold are certainly at a better rate. I don't know the numbers, but I got to assume that bonds that were issued in 2020 have a better interest rate than 14% inflation that's ongoing now. Those annual installments of under $250,000 for that bond that pays in 2037, and then lump sum payments that I know are accruing for the bonds that are that will pay off in 2038 and 2039. Certainly that $8.8 million sounds way better than $10 million plus. Versus $2 million a year that is being proposed to do that I'll just refer to the slide. Okay, so then that's, I'm sorry, excuse me, that's for item 12B. So on item 12D, the tax rate reduction, looking at this notice of public meeting to discuss the budget and the proposed rate. I'm sorry, I'm down to 35 seconds, but it's interesting that we would describe that as a tax rate decrease, but overall the taxes are increased because of the relationship between this board and the board at HCAD to be able to affect that change on the back end. So the front end rate changes, but the back end rate, or not rate, but the appraisal values of our homes is planned to increase at the same time. And so then we end up with a overall tax increase where it hits us in our pockets at our kitchen table.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton.
Thank you.
And quite a few of the items you mentioned will be talked about when we get to those items.
Yes, thank you.
Next up, we have Beverly Cheney, and she's also going to speak on the budget.
Hi, thank y'all. After being alerted and going and reading so many negative comments this last week about our GISD transportation situation, my first instinct was to simply attribute all of the negative rhetoric to politics. But then I got to thinking, that really makes me no different than the people I criticize who make a decision or form an opinion based solely on what side of the political climate they fall. So I decided I'd try to be better than that. And I began to do some research. And I have to admit, I was very shocked when I did some research. I wasn't shocked about what I found out about GISD. I was shocked that so many people are spreading the false narrative without doing research that's so readily available, so easily available. Things are being said that are simply not true, and those things are being repeated as fact. It's amazing to me that that's happening. Now, these facts are pretty clear-cut and simple. Granbury currently has 54 buses. 16 of those buses were bought with money from the bond in 2013. That's the last bond that passed, 2013. I also noted that none of you were on the school board then, and Dr. Glenn, you weren't our superintendent. And yet, that board and that superintendent opted to secure and use bond funds to help facilitate transportation needs for a growing district, much like y'all have tried to do. Kudos to them and kudos to our community for passing that bond. Those 16 buses were bought with bond money over a 3-year period. In 2017, y'all began to do bus replacement with M&O funds. Y'all have bought 19 buses in 7 years. That's incredible. Seems to me like y'all are doing a remarkable job of continuing to update our fleet. Now, 19 of our buses are currently more than 12 years old and have over 125,000 miles. I wonder how many of us in this room drive a 12-year-old vehicle. In order to keep these running, many have had engines overhauled, replaced, or major work done. These buses drive routes that average 100 miles a day, carrying precious cargo, and they're doing it this week in record heat. I urge this board to keep the 4.4% of the annual budget designated for transportation. And perhaps some of the people who are online bashing the school and the transportation department might divert their energy. Try volunteering loading and unloading buses or monitoring a bus. They might find that GISD is something to be proud of. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Cheney. Next up is Ms. Monica Brown on budget.
Good evening. Thank you for the moments to speak here. I am talking about budget, and I haven't read all the stuff about buses. I just suggested that if someone wanted to talk tonight, they could tie it to budget because buses and budgets go together. Some think bonds over buses. I don't. There's a whole bunch of us who don't, but there's some who do, and I say bravo to Granbury for not passing a bond since 2013. I think that's great. Side note, Melanie Graff is not here because she had surgery and is not to be in the public, in case anybody wonders what's going on there. And then why is a homeschooling mom here speaking? I'm a tax-paying citizen, and I'm a free thinker. I used to be in public school. I was never against public school. I'm becoming more against it over what I've seen go on here. But my hope today tonight is to give you some places to research on no new revenue tax rates. It's really confusing, and I personally, there's a lot of things about what's going on here that I can understand, and there's a lot of things I don't. Budget is big. That's a big, big topic. So I learned today that you go to and you know this, the TEA, and you can look up tax year 2024 maximum compressed tax rate. So I'm just kind of making a public service announcement in case someone doesn't know. That's where you can find out about copper pennies and golden pennies and things like that. I'm learning. I don't understand it very much, except I do know that after listening to a man named Andrew McVeigh this week on a podcast by True Texas Project, it's free for anyone to listen to. He has an organization that teaches about taxes and tries to give us all tax relief across the state of Texas. It's my number one priority right now to encourage you, everybody, to listen to what he has to say about no new revenue tax rate and how to relieve people. We have at least 2 other taxing entities in this town that are going to tax us if they pass. So it does concern me, and I didn't check my brain at the door just because I started homeschooling my children. Actually, I put a lot of thought into education, economics, I mean, what's really important, it's important to me. And it didn't make me think that public school wasn't important. It was just a lifestyle choice for me. It meant I could help my mother 2 different times when she became a widow. I was able to serve her and all that. That's off topic, I'm sorry. But I didn't shake my brain at the door, and I do have a voice, and I'm going to stand up for it. And right now, I don't feel like leaving. I feel like coming back and speaking up. What I've seen here has been a shame. And like y'all have heard me say before, I came to Granbury admiring it as a little girl because I grew up in Weatherford. I always thought it was a little better than it was, and I found out it's pretty ugly, pretty mean. So anyway, Andrew McVeigh, TexasTaxpayers.com, TrueTexasProject.com podcast if you want to listen to his podcast is totally free. I think I already said it, but bonds should not include buses. 80% of your budget goes to salary. I question that. I think you could start school later if you don't want it to be so hot. There's an idea. Well, oh my what? Why not? Some of you talked about 4-day school weeks. That's an option too. Be free.
Thank you very much.
That's what I'm talking about. I hope you don't go for mayor again.
Oh, good job.
Last one is Tim Bolton.
So blessed.
I'm sorry. Jim Brown, Tim Bolton has already spoken. I apologize. Jim Brown, you're last on budget.
Thank you, Board, for allowing me some time up here. Had some good notes. I do want to say one thing. Thank you. That was a very good presentation. You're really thinking through. You answered a lot of my questions. I actually did look at the proposed bond. I actually did spend time studying it. However, I do want to at least continue to encourage that this board do all it can to cut expenditures. There are ways to do it. $93 million is a lot of money. There has to be a way to continue to cut. I realize 85, I thought it was 81, but 85% is in fact spent on salaries and benefits. Just like the food service, out of the $4 million, $2 million of it is in salaries and benefits. And the other $2 million is in food or in product. So I want to say that it just seems as though you have $93 million coming into this school district, and what you do is you build a budget of how to spend that $93 million. Maybe, just maybe, there are ways that we could buy, yes, use buses. I mean, I applaud the transportation department for having to work with what it's been allowed money-wise to work with. I think you can dedicate more funds to the transportation department so that they can maybe look at getting good, solid, used buses. They don't have to be new. We don't have to have state-of-the-art. We don't have to teach our children, get the best of everything because you can afford the payments. I believe you can still do a better job, and I am asking again that you cut expenditures. Yes, I also listened to that Andrew McVeigh. He stated that in the last 20 years, population and inflation have gone up over 120%. Local government spending has gone up 337%. Maybe we're just spending too much money on too many wants and not looking at the exact needs. So this is not critical. I love kids. I've got 9 of them. Don't know how they got here, but we don't have a TV either, so. But I do want to say that we can do a better job. If I'm the employee, I cannot go to my employer and just keep asking for more money. Hey, employer, fix my roof. Hey, employer, get me a new car. Hey, employer, I got 9 kids, and you know what? Each of them deserve their own room. So go ahead and buy me a new house. We all have lots of money that we're paying out right now. We're all struggling, but we are working good. But please understand as I close. Thank you, board. You answered a lot of my questions, and I'll stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That is the end of public comment, and we will move on to consider action on items discussed in closed session. The first one is consideration and possible action to name interim superintendent. This would be pending the confirmation of Dr. Glenn as the new Carroll ISD superintendent. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move to hire an interim superintendent if the need arises due to the resignation of Dr. Glenn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. The motion was made by Ms. Alana. It was seconded by Ms. Gore. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right. That is unanimous with one absence. The absence, and I did not mention it at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for reminding me. Ms. Graft is not here this evening because of medical reasons. Okay, with that passing, I will read the following. Our interim superintendent is now selected pending the departure of Dr. Glenn to Carroll ISD. The official announcement will be made Monday, August 26th, after the Carroll ISD board meeting, confirming Dr. Glenn as the new Carroll ISD superintendent. And at that time, we will do a public announcement release and get a hold of the paper, and we'll get that taken care of. All right, moving on, consider staff recommendations.
Thank you, Madam President. You have before you the recommendations from Wes Jones in the HR department. It is the administrative recommendation that you approve was presented tonight.
Madam President, I move that we accept the staff recommendations as presented in closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Gore. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimous with one absence. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda items. Are there any items that need to be pulled for discussion?
Madam
Yes,
President,
Go ahead.
I'd like to pull the budget amendments, item number 11I, just to
Okay.
recognize the donations from the community.
All right, so we're going to pull that. And Ms. Lowry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, when she's done, I have a comment. I'd like to pull the Walsh and Gallegos.
The Welsh Gallegos, okay, let's see, that's, there it is,
G,
okay, G.
yes.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Ms. Gore.
I'd just like to take a moment to recognize the donations that we've received from our community. We've received a donation from Russell Feed and Supply to Granbury FFA Student Activity Fund as a T-shirt sponsor in the amount of $3,000. Donation from Midway USA Foundation to the Granbury MJROTC Student Activity Account to purchase 5 new target systems in the amount of $15,444.53. A donation from Hard 8 Barbecue to the GHS Robotics Team Activity Account in the amount of $250. Donation from Van Griffith Kia to the GHS Robotics Student Activity Account in the amount of $500. A donation from an anonymous sponsor to the GHS Barbecue Team in support of the program in the amount of $3,000. And donations to GISD for convocation. There's a whole list of individuals, businesses, different entities that donated. But those total donations amounted to $13,100. So that's a total donations from the community in the amount of $35,294.53.
Nice. Excellent. Okay, Ms. Lowry.
Yes, regarding the Walsh and Gallegos contract, I have a few comments. We're going to be under a new administration, new superintendent, and possibly 2 new board members. The new superintendent may want to say, and who's going to be the district lawyer. The fee schedules from 2022, has it changed? The contract says the rates can change at any time, have they? Walsh has been a part of GISD problems, handling some critical legal issues. A letter in our paperwork dated August the 1st, 2024 has a CC to Barbara Harrington, still as board president, again on page 55.
letter from Walsh still showing Harrington as the board president. I think all this shows a lack of attention to detail.
I had also noticed that that was incorrect. It is being taken care of. So are there any other comments anyone wants to make concerning Walsh Gallegos?
Do you have a different law firm that you would like to suggest?
No, I think that should be up to the new administration.
Well, the new administration won't be in until January.
Yeah.
So we'd be without a lawyer until January?
Possibly.
Okay, okay.
Just some comments.
Okay, just some comments, and I appreciate it. Any other comments on that particular one? Okay, let's go ahead and we'll vote for that one first, and then we'll take the rest of the consent agenda items.
Madam President, I make a motion that we recommend the board approval, the annual contract with Walsh Gallegos is presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All those in favor about the annual renewal of contract for Walsh Gallegos, please raise your hand. Okay, and those opposed? All right, that is going to be 6-1 or 5-1? 5-1. Sorry, 5-1 with Ms. Lowry being against on that one. Now, let's go back and we'll do the consent agenda items for all other items. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the rest of the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Lana. All those in favor of the rest of the consent agenda items, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous with one absence. All right, moving on now to discussion. First item, consider renewal of property, crime, general liability, educators' legal liability, and automobile insurance with Texas political subdivisions. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, in front of you, you do have the presentation from TPS, or our Texas Political Subdivisions. It's a joint self-insurance fund, and it is purchase liability insurance and our property coverage. The 24-25 school year, the total premium cost will be $1,124,928. This is an increase of $146,662, which is a 15% overall increase. Things that affected that, our property values have increased by 4.5%. The district now has $255,345,877 in property value. Key changes also include we increased our deductible from $50,000 to $100,000 per occurrence. The windstorm and hail deductible remains at 1% per location with a $500,000 minimum per occurrence. And premiums for general liability, school board liability, law enforcement, and auto coverage will remain relatively flat. The crime coverage premium has increased from $1,015 to $2,085, and the cyber liability premium has increased from $7,270 to $9,645. It's the recommendation that the board approve the purchase of property, crime, general liability, school board, legal liability, and automobile insurance through the Texas Political Subdivision Joint Self-Insurance Fund at a cost of $1,124,928 for the 24-25 school year, effective September 1st, 2024 through August 31st, 2025.
There are certain days I just hate insurance. But it's something that we all have to pay. Does anyone have any comments on that?
I just have one question for Emmett. Is that the only insurance policies we have? That's the whole thing?
That encompasses our general liability and our property and casualty. It's at automobile all the way up through board liability.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we accept the renewal of the property, crime, general liability, educators' legal liability, and automobile insurance with Texas Political Subdivisions.
Thank you, Ms. Gore. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous with one absence. Moving on to the next. Discuss and consider adoption of an order authorizing defeasance and redemption of a portion of Granbury Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bonds, taxable series 2020A, levying an ad valorem tax to provide for said defeasance and redemption, authorizing an escrow agreement, and enacting
other matters related to the subject.
Thank you, Madam President. Boy, this is what we talked about in the public hearing at the beginning of the meeting. It is a redemption of $8,880,000 of bonds. It will save taxpayers $1,983,081 in interest payments. It is the recommendation that the board adopt the order authorizing the defeasance and redemption of a portion of Granbury Independent School District's unlimited tax refunding bonds, taxable series 2020-A, and all the matters and incidents and related thereto.
And just a note, because I know this question has come up, these monies cannot be used for new construction. These monies cannot be used for maintenance on old construction, and these monies cannot be used to purchase school buses. So what they can be used for is to pay down debt previously approved by the community, and that's what we're asking for tonight.
Yes, sir.
The way that the INS works is the taxpayers determine what they want us to spend that money on, and that is the only thing we can spend that money on. We don't get to choose. And so we can't go fix anything. We can't just decide, well, we need more buses. We can use that. So that is why we use the money to pay down our debt and save the taxpayers the interest money. So do I have a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
Emmett, why are we doing this now? From what I understood from reading it, we really don't need to do this until 2025? Or you're getting it ready for 2025?
This is, whenever we start developing the budget, we do call our financial advisor, and they give us the best advice on what we can do. Of course, we're not refinancing any bonds right now because the interest rates are higher, but we can pay them off early and save taxpayers interest payments.
Okay, if we're saving taxpayers' money, which is always a good thing, but how does that affect anything that we may need to be fixed on a routine basis? How is
We can't
by
fix
paying-
anything.
No, but if we're paying a bunch of money to pay down the debt to save, is that causing any issues with us being able to fix other things?
No, ma'am.
It's
It's governmental fund accounting. In this particular fund, the only thing we're allowed to do is pay off debt. It's not M&O. M&O is where we have to do that 7869 tax rate that we talked about earlier. That's our M&O. That's where we can fix stuff and take care of salaries and those things. The INS budget can only be a taxable rate to pay off existing bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Yes,
I
sir.
move that we adopt the order authorizing the defeasance and redemption of a portion of Granbury Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bonds, taxable series 2020A, and all matters related incident and related thereto.
Thank
I'll
you,
s-
Mr. Winberly.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Gore. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous with one absence. Moving on. Consider adoption of the 2024-2025 General Operating Child Nutrition and Debt Service Budgets. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, before you do have the general operating, the food service, and the debt service budget that we discussed in open meeting earlier. The required notice was published in the local newspaper, and the public hearing was scheduled for tonight at 6 p.m. That will have taken place by this time with this agenda. There were a few changes from the July workshop that we talked about. The tax rate to meet the general fund budget will be the 78.69%, and then the debt service rate will be the 14.5 cents. And you can see that those budgets are behind this particular memo. The budget will be set at $93,901,941 for the general operating budget. The debt service budget will generate revenues in $13,911,918 with expenditures of $12,904,748, which includes the defeasance that you just approved. And the child nutrition budget will generate revenues of $4,666,268 with expenditures of $4,768,218, sorry. And that's your three budgets for approval.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because our mayor mentioned something about what we're paying HCAD. That is our recapture payment that we have to pay the state, is that correct?
No, ma'am. HCAD is our appraisal and our collections, and this year it's budgeted at $1,750,000 for HCAD.
Okay.
And that includes Somerville, Johnson, and Parker as well.
Yeah, HCAD's composed of 10 entities. We are one of those 10 entities, and that's our proportionate share, which is probably about 62%-ish
Yes, sir.
of the total HCAD budget.
All right, may I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that the board adopt the budgets as presented by our administration.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Is there any other discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Those in favor of the budgets, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous with one absence. All right, moving on. Consider adoption of the 2024-2025 tax rate. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. With the adoption of the budgets that you just adopted, that will set the tax rate at 93.19 cents. That is 78.69 cents on the M&O side and 14.5 cents on the debt service side. And that is a 0.0023 cent decrease, which is just shy of a quarter of a cent decrease in the tax rate. And that is based on the maximum compressed tax rate plus the 17 pennies that the taxpayers approved in November.
That have been approved. So in other words, given what the state has told us we need as a tax rate, they have told us we need to be, this is our floor and our ceiling. And with the Vader that this community passed, this is what our tax rate is.
Yes, ma'am. The maximum compressed tax rate is at 61.69. That is the floor because no district in the state of Texas can be lower than 90% of any other district, so they have a window, and we are at that floor, plus the 17 cents, which includes 8 golden pennies, 9 copper pennies, and then our 14.5 cents to service our debt rate, including the defeasance that you just approved.
Which will put us slightly over 93 cents total tax rate.
Correct.
93.19%, 19 cents.
9 cents. Do I have a motion?
I have a question first.
Okay, can we do the motion then ask question? I'm sorry, I was doing it backwards. We're supposed to do the motion first. Yeah, I'm sorry, but we will definitely get you your question.
Madam President, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 93.19 cents, which is effectively an increase in the tax rate.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Lowry.
This says that we're going to have a decrease by the 0.23. And then the language says that it's an increase. And all these little pennies and coppers and golds were all part of the battery that we voted on last year, correct? Okay,
Some of them we already had.
Okay, under the heading comparison of proposed levy with the last year's levy on the average residence, we're actually getting a tax increase of $339.30 due to the appraised value of our homes. So we are getting a tax increase, correct?
That is correct. That's the language that Mr. Wimberly just used, and that's the reason we have to say that, because that is law. It is a reduction in the tax rate. It is not a reduction in the tax.
Very good, thank you.
Any other comments? All right, then let's vote on that. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and those opposed? Okay, 5, 4, 1 against. Ms. Lowry is against.
Motion to reconsider.
All right, go ahead.
I would just like to hear from Ms. Lowry what she thinks our tax rate should be.
Can we have a second on your motion?
Yeah?
I'll say it.
Okay, so we have a second on that. Ms. Lowry?
A motion to reconsider is for you to reconsider, not for me to reconsider my vote and tell you what my vote is.
Well, I want to reconsider what we're voting on. If you have other information as far as what our tax rate should be that I'm not aware of, I'd like to know so I can make an informed vote when we do take a vote.
No, we voted. I'm fine, thank you.
So do you have any information you'd like to share with us regarding what the tax rate should be, or? No.
Okay.
Okay.
She has none.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will vote one more time since it's been reconsidered. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, same as before, we're 5-1 with one absence. All right, going on. Consider resolution committing fund balance. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Currently, the board has approved a capital expenditure of committed fund balance of $540,000 and other purposes for instructional improvement of $540,000. This resolution will commit in this next year, will commit capital expenditures for vehicles and equipment at $750,000 and other purposes of instructional improvement for $540,000. The $750,000 is the projected sale of the 5 acres at the Acton James Road that should take place on the 23rd. Again, this is just committing the fund balance. It doesn't mean that it has to be used at that point if the sale does not go through, but at this point, it looks like the sale will go through, and that $750,000 can be used for vehicles or equipment in the committed fund balance, and that will show in the audit.
Very good. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we commit the funds to the fund balance as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any comments or questions on exactly what this is, what's going on here?
And
Go ahead.
No, I do want to mention right now, we do have allocated in the budget for 2024, 2025, the purchase of 5 new school buses, which will somewhere give and take about $750,000. They're ranging between $125,000 and $140,000 right now, depending on what we can get when we put it out for bid.
The commitment of that fund balance will allow us to put that in the budget at a later date.
And just speaking of buses, just real quick, you looked for used buses, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you find?
We did find one in Glen Rose, but it was a mid-'90s model, older than our fleet. Typically, when you look for buses, if you look for them, if you get them out of the Houston ISD or one of those, you're looking at rust problems and those kinds of things. Just depends on the area that you find them and if you can find them for the right price for the condition they're in. But when you get them off of the coast, you're dealing with rust, so that's just somebody else's problems. Or like I said, the one that we found in Glen Rose was older than our fleet, so it was not feasible.
But y'all are actively looking for good used buses that we could save money on.
Mr.
purchasing.
Carruthers and the purchasing team do look for those whenever we get emails saying there's buses for auction, but typically they're like the buses that we auction off. They're past their prime.
And we also have rebuilt some engines in lieu of purchasing new buses as well, right?
When I checked with transportation this morning, instead of purchasing new buses, I think we were at 3 engines and 4 transmissions, which are about half price to purchasing a new bus.
Thank you.
All right, so we have consider resolution to commit fund balance. We've already done that one, right? Did we vote? Okay.
Just to clarify, so we're committing this fund balance so that we can purchase new buses.
That's correct. It is committing it, and it'll be in the audit, and it'll reflect there in the audit, and can be amended later into the budget to purchase those. But it is your intent, when you do commit fund balance, to use it for that purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what I was saying. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor of considering the resolution to commit fund balance, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous with 1 absence. Consider delegating authority to the superintendent to obligate the school district under Chapter 49. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the agreement to purchase of attendance credits, which you will approve in the same motion whenever you use a specific language. Delegating the authority is simply giving the superintendent the authority to load it into TEA for you, but you do actually sign the purchase agreement for attendance credit. And that is what we do this every year. It's basically giving the superintendent the authority
To submit it to TEA.
to submit it to TEA.
It's TEA. And when does that take place?
It'll take place, once we get this signed, we can
Next week.
do it next
Okay.
week.
Very good. All right. I need a motion, and the exact board language is on page 161.
Does it need to be in past tense? It's in past tense on there.
This is taken directly from TEA.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam President, I move that for the 2024-2025 school year, we delegated contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code 11.1511C4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under Texas Education Code 48.257 and Texas Education Code Chapter 49, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under Texas Education Code 49.006. This included approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit.
All right, may I have a motion? So you have the motion, that's a second. Okay, so we have Core, Wimberly. Any comments on that or discussion before we vote? Okay, those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous with one absence. Continuing on, consider technology purchases for the 2024-2025 school year. Mr. Wilson, somebody different. Go ahead.
Board, in front of you have a list of itemized and generalized list of known and anticipated expenses for the 24-25 school year that the technology department will use to purchase licensing software and other hardware means. If you have any questions, I would be honored to answer them. And otherwise, there's action items for all the items that are exceeding $100,000 this time.
Are there any ones that are new this year from what we've done previously?
No, ma'am. And the only thing that will decrease is my computer equipment allotment as we're trying to squeeze and get other things in. Everything else is going up. So the cost of replacement devices is going to have to go down.
Madam President, I move that we approve all purchases over $100,000 as outlined in this memo.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimous with one absence. Moving on, approve joint election contracts with Hood, Somerville, Johnson, and Parker counties, including approval of an order of election for school board trustee places 3 and 4 on November 5, 2024. Dr. Glenn.
Thank you, Madam President. What you have before you is the orders of elections for a November 5th trustee election. We do have a contested election of 2 places, and this will allow us to execute contracts with the 4 counties in our jurisdiction. It is our recommendation that you approve as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the joint election contracts with Hood, Somerville, Johnson, and Parker counties, including approval of an order of election for school board trustees, place 3 and 4 on the November 5th, 2024 ballot.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Alana. Any comments or questions? Okay, those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous with one absence. Moving on, consider board approval of a delegate to the 2024 Texas Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly. That is something that will take place on September 28th, 2024 in San Antonio at the Tex EdCon 24. Last year, Ms. Gore was our delegate. Do I have any nominations?
Madam President, I would like to nominate Courtney Gore as a delegate and Barbara Townsend as an alternate for the 2024 Texas Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly.
Are there any other nominations? All right.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. All right, so we're going to vote. We'll vote, since there's no other people being nominated, we will vote for these 2 together. Those in favor of Ms. Gore for delegate and Ms. Townsend for alternate delegate, please raise your hand. All right, that was unanimous with one absence. Thank you all very much. And we are done with that, and we move on to reports. Teacher incentive allotment report.
How are you?
I'm good. My mom's here tonight, so I'm a little nervous.
Aww.
She came to visit me. So Board, you have a packet of slides that we're going to be showing everybody on the teacher incentive allotment. We refer to it as TIA. And before we get started, we're going to show you just a really quick video that gives the general overview for everybody that's here at the meeting and everybody that's watching. So.
The teacher incentive allotment was established by House Bill 3 during the 86th legislature and is designed to give Texas teachers access to a six-figure salary. The program's goal is to reward, retain, and recruit effective teachers while promoting equitable distribution of these teachers. Teachers are eligible to generate allotment funds for their district based on their performance. Participating districts can designate a teacher as recognized, exemplary, or master based on teacher observation, student growth, or other factors determined by the district. Teachers can also reach recognized status by obtaining a national board certification. Once a designation is achieved, it lasts for 5 years or until their national board certification expires. Annual funding allotments are based on designations, rural status of the campus, and level of student economic need. A district will receive a TIA allotment between $3,000 and $32,000 for each employed designated teacher. Higher funding is generated for rural and high-needs campuses. A teacher's designation will move with them if they decide to work in another district. If the teacher meets eligibility requirements at their new district, then the funds generated will be awarded to the new district during the next year's allotment cycle. Districts who want to be approved for a local teacher designation system will need to develop and implement a system based on teacher observation and student growth measures. The Texas Education Agency approves district systems based on their validity and reliability. Approval of a local designation system is a two-step process over the course of 3 school years. The district should develop their system through stakeholder engagement, solidifying the components of their system, and aligning their system to performance standards. When the district has solidified their system, they will then submit their system application to TEA for review. This is known as Step 1 of the approval process. Upon approval of their application, they will begin their data capture year. This year represents the first year districts are implementing their system and capturing the teacher observation and student growth data. This year also represents a district's cohort letter. For example, the first data capture year was 2018 to 2019 and represents cohort A. After capturing their data in the data capture year, in the following school year, the district will complete Step 2 of the approval process by submitting data from the previous school year along with their proposed designations to Texas Tech University for data validation. TEA will then review the outcomes of the data validation and the application to determine final approval. If approved, the district will be approved to issue designations. Designated teachers who are employed by the district and meet eligibility requirements will generate an allotment for their district. 90% of the funds generated must be used for compensation of teachers employed at the campus where the designated teacher works. Up to 10% of funds can be used for costs associated with supporting a local designation system or to support teachers in obtaining designations. Learn how to reward, retain, and recruit effective teachers at your district by visiting our website, tiatexas.org.
Everybody get all excited by that video. I know. All right, you guys, so I just wanted to update you on GISD's process. We are actually in year 1 of applying for a designation and developing our local designation system. So I wanted to let you guys know specifically what has been done up until this point. So we've completed the letter of interest and we've identified the TIA lead for the district. We have established an email specifically. Brent helped us set up one that is a general email that goes to 3 specific people in our department that allows us to respond to any questions on information that may be considered by other people around the district. So any questions come directly to us. We've established a local designation development committee, and our principals helped us designate to make sure that we got, all of our levels, all of our different areas, CTE, all of our fine arts, et cetera, to make sure that we have a nice varied group. We conducted an information meeting with our local designation development committee where we had Crowley ISD come in and speak to our committee about the process. They are in their 4th year of teacher incentive allotment. We developed 3 specific committees for the fall. So we have a student growth measure committee. We also have a T-test evaluation and calculation committee, and we have a communications subcommittees. Don't those sound so exciting? They were psyched to be part of those. Scheduled and invited all of our committee members to all meetings for the fall semester. And so we kind of designated Tuesday as TIA Tuesday. And so we have a meeting every Tuesday from now through January for each of the committees. Notified all of our principals of the committee members from their campuses, all of the meeting dates. Some of our principals are on the different committees. Others are always invited to any committee that they would like to be a part of. We determined the location for documentation. We've been working with Lisa and also with Ryan, and we've got a specific area where all of the minutes from all of the committee meetings, all of the information will be listed on the GISD website for general communication purposes, kind of a one-stop shop to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing, what the outcomes were as we go along through the process. So on the next slide, just to kind of review, we're in the system development process. We engage with all of our educators, our stakeholders, and develop the local designation system. Then we will send our application in April. Next year, once we get approved by TEA, we will have our data capture year. Once we determine our student growth measure, our evaluation and calibration plan, I'm throwing around lots of words. You guys are like glazing over, but just remember I'm the only thing standing between you and Emmett for the rest of the meeting. Data submission follows the data capture year where we submit all of the data that was collected to Texas Tech University for data validation, and then TEA reviews all of the designations. At the end of the 3rd year, we are notified around February of the specific people that have earned the designation for their campus. All right, so the 3 big critical decisions that we have to make with our committee this fall is who can earn the designation. How are we going to decide which campuses / teachers are eligible? We have to make sure that we designate observations, student growth measures, and if there's any optional components that we want to consider. Do we want to be considering anybody that mentors a younger teacher? Do we want to give them some sort of credit? Do we want to do any kind of rough survey for any type of leadership activities? Are you a member of these committees on your campus, and give extra components of designation? Then we have to come back and we will decide how we want to distribute the funds and the timing of compensation. And I know most of you guys remember that we submitted a spending plan. We actually have teachers, teacher incentive allotment designated teachers that have come to us from other districts. And so last year we had a teacher that was designated in Fort Worth that came to Granbury, and we had to quickly develop a spending plan to let them know how we were going to be paying him. And you guys know the 3 big things: recruit, retain, and reward. We want to reward our teachers. We want to recruit teachers from other places. So the teacher that came from Fort Worth, they only received 75% of the funds went directly to the teacher. And so we decided, since we can't, with Fort Worth's salary, we wanted to give 90% of those funds back directly to the teacher. And so you can start to compete with other districts depending upon the percentage that you give back to your teachers. As well as the timing of compensation. In Crowley, they set it up so that if you have signed contract in July, that's when your designation starts, as opposed to giving it to them and then they leave and go to another district. So All right, just a real quick recap. We're almost done. The system components that are required. You have to have a teacher observation. We have to have observation based upon T-tests or a different aligned rubric, and our application must show evidence that we have calibration, meaning that an evaluation at one campus is close to exactly the same as another teacher on another campus, whether it's different grade level, different subject area, whatever. We also do a student growth measure, which is one of the committees. We'll design specifically what we want to use in order to show the growth of our students. But we also have to prove on the application the evidence of validity and reliability in what it is we are using, as well as how we're administering it, is it secure, and how do we score it. The last thing that's submitted is the spending plan, that we have to spend at least 90% on the teacher compensation for student-facing instructional roles, and that we can reserve the 10% back for the district in order to support teachers moving forward. So specifically, the 10% that we have discussed, which we will put to committees, is additional funding to support a cohort for our national board certification. There are some teachers, any teacher right now can start in a cohort for national board certification, which earns them a recognized level. And so we could connect them with the 10% of all of the teacher incentive allotment and money that we earn, then we can pay that towards a service center to help them with their cohort. Then optional components, we decide whether districts whether we want to add a specific mentoring or leadership or family surveys, student surveys, et cetera. All right. Y'all good? Okay. It's a lot of information, I know. So just to give you an idea of the intensity and the next steps, we will spend the next 4 Tuesdays determining student growth measurement system, our system for how we are going to document the growth of our students. Then we will spend 3 Tuesdays after that determining our calculations and our calibration system with the committee. Then we have 2 meetings with our community communication liaisons. Will establish a system of consistent campus communication, one of the hardest things to do. But they will design how we communicate out to our campuses, and then everybody will do PowerPoint, Canva, whatever we decide and whatever they design. Then we have 2 meetings where we come back together, we determine weighting of the systems, we establish a spending plan, we consider different optional systems, and we determine a timeline for expansion of the draft system. One of the big things that Crowley said to us is start with your highest area of need, start small. And so we know that the national board certification is available for any teacher right now. And so we will make sure that we review that with our local designation district committee. They were part of the meeting with Crowley, so they heard that as well. And then we bring our TIA draft presentation and feedback to our campus admin. And then we bring revisions based upon multiple committees and admin feedback. We do draft presentations on all the campuses. We meet to review the feedback from all the campuses, and we get into the cycle of collect, analyze, reflect, and again, action. We'll bring you guys a draft of the TIA guidebook that outlines specifically, and we'll post it for public feedback on the website after we present it to you. And then we submit our application for TEA review. And do you have any questions?
So you have been talking to Crowley about how they did it and the steps they had. So I'm sure that that's going to be very helpful. And then you said that the person that we have that has joined Granbury ISD is from Fort Worth. Have you also talked to them? I mean, is like every school district doing a different way of handling this?
Yes, so every school district does something that is unique for their school district. So we have consulted and reviewed probably 50 different guidebooks from across the state, and how people are, what unique things do they do? If they were having trouble, they wanted to give paraprofessionals some sort of compensation associated, then that was part of the spending plan. And so there were very unique qualities that were specific to the districts that are out there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know it's a lot of work for the teachers, but in the end, it's worth it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're making sure it's worth it for the teachers. I've talked to some teachers where it wasn't worth their time to put in the effort, because at the end of the day, they just weren't getting enough of that allotment. And so I want to make sure we're compensating our teachers fairly for the amount of work they're going to be putting into this.
Yes, absolutely. And so just to make sure that you guys know, national board certification is a little bit different than TIA. TIA is basically, we're taking the class that you're assigned and you're documenting growth. And the teachers actually don't have to do the documentation, it's us. So we're the ones that do the extra documentation, evaluation, correlation. Brent developed a system. We've been doing some calibration on past so that we can say, all right, where would we land? How many teachers would get this? And it is based upon the state standards for recognized, exemplary, and master. So it isn't just within your district. It is a statewide designation. So, thank you.
Stacy Carr.
Go ahead. So there are financial incentives for teachers to go through this quite complex process, correct?
There are. It is tied specifically financially to teachers, and we would want our spending plan to reflect, like Ms. Gore said, we want our teachers to get the majority. Obviously, 90% has to be given back for the local designation. So there are multiple ways, but not all teachers have a student-based measure for, you take a CTE course. However, CTE teachers are right now available to do a national board certification, which is a little bit different. That would earn them the recognized level. So does that answer your question?
It does, sort of.
Okay.
Now, is it locally, is that budgeted locally once the money is awarded? Is that done by the state?
It is absolutely 100% in the state's laws. On the 86th legislature, you heard them say, it was put into statute that they must support and provide the funding. So it comes out of the Foundation School Program or the FSP, and that is where the funding comes from. It does not come from us locally. It only comes directly from the state.
And why didn't we start this earlier?
So we did, believe it or not. We had two of our very dedicated principals who came out and did lots of surveys, and Margaret Rodriguez and also Maggie Walton led surveys and had meetings, and they had done that for multiple years, and they were not getting the level of buy-in that they were wanting. And so when teachers started getting money is what started increasing the buy-in. And that, then we were like, listen, we're going to go forward with this. So Maggie and Margaret have been working for several years ahead of this as well.
So really, this report is just introducing us to this program, and you will be working all year on it, and you will be coming back to us with more details and information at a later time.
Absolutely.
Great job. Y'all have put in a lot of work.
Thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Ms. Wilmoth, I know this is a heavy lift by your department. I think it's worthwhile. I know I speak to a lot of teachers, and they are certainly tracking TIA. As we look to recruit and retain the best teachers, this is just another resource, another pool of money we can look at. So thank you guys for what you're doing, being champions for kids. We appreciate it.
All right, moving on. Financial statements for period ending July 31, 2024. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, in front of you, you have the financial statements for July 31st, 2024. You can see that the transactions that occurred between September 1st, 2023 and July 31st, 2024, the revenue collected to date equals 98.01% of the budget amount compared to 98.12% in 22 and 23. Expenditures to date represent 84.34% of the budget as compared to 80.81% of the budget in 22-23. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
So are you expecting to be at 100% by the end of August?
Are you talking about on the revenues, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we talked about, we filed a 5302 audit at spring break. The state comptroller came back and said, okay, there's too many people filing these audits because it was a flaw in Southwest data on the representation of loss on frozen levies, which we went from $17 million to $7 million on our frozen levies. So they came out with a new form called a 5400 that we all had to file not long ago with supporting data to correct those loss and frozen levies. It just has not come through yet.
Okay.
So I'm reluctant to change that budget until I see exactly what the comptroller is going to do, which
Understood.
theoretically should be done before the audit is complete.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well, why don't you just move on into cash flow and investment report?
Yes, ma'am. Board in front of you, you have the cash flow and investment report. You can see that to date, well, July 2024, we had $260,273.56 in interest, and for a total, with one more month left, of $2,570,682.97 in total interest rates for this year.
Very good, all right. And take us home with categorical spending report.
Yes, ma'am. The attached categorical spending purchases are between $50,000 and $100,000 for the period July 1st, 2024 and July 31st, 2024 are being reported as required by Board Policy CH Local. There are $53,217.60 in purchases within that amount. It was to the CDW government, and it was under the DIR cooperative purchasing.
Very good.
Mr. Whitefield, again, a long meeting for you, a lot of reports.
Yes.
Just again, a shout out to the great job, great leadership by you, but great job by your entire department. We appreciate you putting together the budget, the tax rate, all the hard work you put into this meeting. You do a great job.
Yes, it's so nice to be able to ask you questions and have you have the answer right there. It's not, I'll get back to you. So thank you so much. And with that, it is now 7:36, and I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Board.